The dark truth behind Robin Hood, a legend twisted by time. For centuries, the legend of Robin Hood has been told as a tale of heroism, a noble outlaw who stole from the rich and gave to the poor. But what if the truth was far more sinister? Beneath the romanticized stories lies a much darker history, one filled with crime, violence, and political deception. Origins in blood and chaos. The earliest mentions of Robin Hood do not depict a chivalrous hero, but rather a ruthless outlaw feared across medieval England. Historians have traced his origins to the 13th and 14th centuries, a time of brutal feudal rule and widespread rebellion. The name Robin Hood may not have belonged to a single person, but instead was a nickname used for bandits, thieves, and highwaymen who defied the law. In legal records from the 1200s, robehod or rabenhod was a term commonly used to describe fugitives and criminals. The earliest ballads featuring Robin Hood do not portray him as a selfless benefactor of the poor. Instead, they tell of a merciless outlaw who would kill without hesitation, especially if someone stood in his way. A rebellion fueled by greed, not justice. Modern stories paint Robin Hood as a hero, fighting against the corrupt Sheriff of Nottingham and the oppressive Prince John, while remaining loyal to King Richard the Lionheart. But in reality, medieval England was a place of brutal power struggles, where loyalty was often dictated by gold and survival rather than morality. If Robin Hood truly existed, he was likely a mercenary rather than a noble freedom fighter. Some accounts suggest he was a disgruntled knight or a disgraced soldier turned outlaw, attacking merchants and nobles not to help the poor, but to enrich himself and his men. His supposed generosity? Likely nothing more than a means to gain local support. Many bandits throughout history used propaganda to justify their actions, convincing the poor that they were acting in their interest while keeping the lion's share of the loot for themselves. Nottingham's true terror. The Sheriff of Nottingham, often depicted as a heartless tyrant, was actually a position held by several men across different periods. Their main role was to enforce the king's law, collect taxes, and suppress crime. If Robin Hood and his band truly existed, they would have been considered nothing more than a dangerous gang of criminals, no different from the ruthless warlords who roamed the lawless English countryside. Records from medieval England mention several brutal outlaw gangs that terrorized the local population, extorting villagers for protection money and murdering those who refused to comply. It's entirely possible that Robin Hood's real exploits were closer to organized crime than noble rebellion. The church's involvement and the sanitization of the legend. So how did Robin Hood's reputation transform from feared criminal to beloved folk hero? The answer lies in medieval storytelling, politics, and the influence of the church. By the 15th century, ballads about Robin Hood had become wildly popular, but the darker aspects of his story began to fade. The church played a key role in sanitizing his image. Some later stories even depicted Robin Hood as a devout Christian who robbed from corrupt clergy to aid honest commoners. This was likely done to make the legend more acceptable to the ruling class, shaping him into a symbol of justice rather than lawlessness. Over time, Robin Hood became a tool of political propaganda, with different rulers and movements rewriting his story to suit their needs. By the Victorian era, Robin Hood had been fully transformed into the gentle, honorable outlaw we recognize today, a far cry from the ruthless figure he may have once been. The truth we may never know. The true identity of Robin Hood remains a mystery. Was he a single man or a combination of multiple outlaws? Was he a revolutionary or just another opportunist in a violent age? One thing is certain, his legend has been rewritten countless times to fit the ideals of different societies. The Robin Hood we know today is not the one that existed in medieval England. Behind the familiar tale of a noble thief lies a darker, bloodier truth, one that history has done its best to bury. But now, perhaps, you know the story they never wanted you to hear. If you found this story fascinating, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into history's hidden truths.